Judiciary Chairman Republican Chuck Grassley is still holding out hope Professor Christine Blasey Ford will speak to his committee on Monday, but he's not willing to draw this out much longer.
This is a political tactic designed to prevent the president from putting his nominee on the court.
This is a circus. It's a national disgrace. It is a high-tech lynching.
Why are Republicans in the Congress playing along with this?
It is a message that unless you kowtow to an old order, you will be lynched, destroyed, caricatured by a committee of the U.S. Senate rather than hung from a tree.
If they get away with this, then you have CNN running the country.
Freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged.
An informed patriot is what we want.
Welcome to American Family Radio's Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio.
Muscular Christianity.
Where we relentlessly explore the intersection of truth and politics.
The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.
Now, here's your host, Brian Fisher.
Welcome to this Thursday edition of Focal Point on the American Family Radio Network. I am not Brian Fisher, but I am Walker Wildman, and I'm sitting in for the great Brian Fisher today. He's out traveling on AFA business, but I'm glad to sit in on the show today, glad to host the show today for Brian. Wish him safe travels. He'll be back in the next day or two, and we'll continue on with more of Focal Point. But in the meantime, we're going to cover a lot of news today, a lot of what's going on in Washington, D.C. We're going to give you the everyday American view, the everyday American flyover of Washington, D.C. We're going to get out of the swamp. We're not going to talk like the politicians. We're going to tell you how it is and let you know what's really going on, because you deserve to know. You, the taxpayer, deserve to know what's going on in Washington, D.C. A couple ways to keep up with the show today. First, you can watch the show on Facebook and YouTube. That's assuming they don't censor us. Ha. Who knows if they're going to censor us or not, or what day. But anyways, for now, at least, you can watch the show on Facebook or YouTube. And another way to keep up with the show is on our podcast page at afr.net. afr.net. You can catch the podcast there. But before we jump into the news of the day, I want to turn our attention to God's Word. Specifically, we're going to be in the New Testament. We're going to be in Hebrews 13. Hebrews 13. And here we have the author of Hebrews talking in Hebrews 13, verse 7. We have the author talking to the church, and he says, "Remember your leaders," verse 7, "those who spoke to you the word of God. Consider the outcome of their way of life and imitate their faith." Verse 8, and this is what I want us to focus on, verse 8, "Jesus Christ is the same yesterday and today and forever." Verse 9, "Do not be led away by diverse and strange teachings, for it is good for the heart to be strengthened by grace, not by foods, which have not benefited those devoted to them." And so, verse 8 there, Jesus Christ is the same yesterday and today, and then the author goes on to warn us, warn the church about false teachings, about strange teachings. And the reason I wanted to point out verse 8 there is because many times in our culture nowadays, in 2018, you'll hear statements like this from church leaders. You know, it's the 21st century. We're just kind of having to change our approach to things. You know, we need to appeal to the culture, and we need to appeal to people, to the world, in order to get them to come in the church so we can share the gospel with them. And that's not, things like that are not always ill-intentioned, and they're not always bad. But what I want us to pay close attention to here and to take note of is that Jesus Christ and His Word, He remains the same throughout past and throughout eternity. He's the same yesterday and today and forever. And so, you know, we may change how we approach things. We may change how we, share the gospel, which avenues to take. and different approaches, but as far as God's word, it stays the same. It doesn't change. God's character, God's word does not change. So it's important that we also don't change or try to bend God's word to fit our certain situations. But moving straight into the content today for the show, I have a task for our Focal Point listeners. I have a task for our listeners, and here's what I want you to do. I have a hint. I have an inclination to believe that Facebook is trying to censor the American Family Association. And this has just come out in the past hour or two, but we're getting reports from some of our Facebook followers that they're trying to share AFA links on their Facebook page, and they're getting a blocked error. They're getting an error that they can't share AFA links. And now it appears that Facebook's kind of fixed, they've kind of reversed course, and they've fixed whatever kind of error was going on, whatever their minions were doing in Silicon Valley. But here's what I want to do, just so we can absolutely drive the tyrants crazy at Facebook. Here's what we're going to do. We're just going to overload Facebook with AFA links. We're going to overload Facebook with AFA articles, and one article I want to share, I want us to share on Facebook, is one from Brian Fisher. Here's the article he wrote just this past week, an excellent article. I have it bumped up to the top at afa.net. The title of the blog is, What Should Be Done About the Kavanaugh Nomination? What should be done about the Kavanaugh nomination? And here's your task. Go to afa.net, click on Brian's article at the top of the page, What Should Be Done About the Kavanaugh Nomination, and then share it with absolutely as many people as possible. Share it on your Facebook page, email it around to all your friends, share it on Twitter, and get this thing out there. And we're absolutely going to drive Facebook crazy with this, because they're going to say, this article is going crazy. This article is all over the place. We can't censor it. We can't get rid of it. What are we going to do? And so that's the task for today, to try to drive the minions and the tyrants and the socialists crazy at Facebook for what it looks like trying to censor American Family Association content from our own website. Moving into the content of the show today, many of you probably heard the Clarence Thomas clip from 1991, October 11th, 1991. Clarence Thomas is before the U.S. Senate, and he's being falsely accused of all kind of misdeeds on one of the last days of his hearings in the Senate Judiciary Committee. And I want us to listen to what Clarence Thomas has to say about the slandering that went on in the U.S. Senate over 20 years ago. This is clip one. Let's listen.
This is a circus. It's a national disgrace. It is a high-tech lynching for uppity blacks who in any way deign to think for themselves. And it is a message that unless you kowtow to an old order, you will be lynched, destroyed, caricatured by a committee of the U.S. Senate rather than hung from a tree.
Well, that's chilling right there, because that's what's being done to Brett Kavanaugh. The high-tech lynching that happened under Clarence Thomas has crossed racial lines, and now we're high-tech lynching a white man named Brett Kavanaugh. And that just shows that the Democrats don't care. White, black, Hispanic, whoever you are that's a conservative and loves our country and loves the Constitution, they'll hang you from a tree. They will absolutely hang you from a tree, no shame about it. Clarence Thomas talked about the high-tech lynching in 1991. Same thing happening today to Brett Kavanaugh. And we're going to talk more about this after the break. We're going to talk about the absolute holes in the accuser's argument against Brett Kavanaugh. And then we're going to talk about how actually it's the Democrats that should be talking and should be looking at themselves and the sexual misdeeds that are being reported about some of the leading people in their party. Keith Ellison, does that ring a bell? Well, stay tuned to Focal Point on American Family Radio. More after the break.
Good news. You are not stuck with your healthcare plan. Really. You have a choice, and it's a great one. It's called MediShare, and if you've heard about it and wondered what exactly it is, it's a way that people share their healthcare bills, and these are people who have a common faith, who want to be part of something beautiful that not only meets their healthcare needs, but the needs of others too. And it's people who love to save money, big time. MediShare members typically save $500 a month per family on their healthcare costs. That is a life changer for people. So this could be for you. Maybe it's what you've been looking for, a way to pay healthcare bills that's not only very smart financially, but it's even profound. MediShare is a nonprofit with 400,000 members nationwide who pray for and share with each other. So yes, you're not stuck. There's another way, and it could save you a lot. Hit *345 to find out how much you can save on your healthcare. Message and data rates may apply. That's *345.
Always being prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you. My name is Abraham Hamilton III, and this is the Hamilton Minute. Many who oppose Christianity target their hostility on our foundation, the Bible. They say it's unreliable because Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 are contradictory accounts of the creation story. In actuality, the two chapters are complementary and not contradictory. When Jesus was asked about marriage, he quoted from both chapters 1 and 2 in saying that he made them both to be male and female in the beginning, and for this cause shall a man leave his mother and father and cleave unto his wife. Genesis 1 is an overview of the creation story. Genesis 2 is an up-close examination of day 6. If Jesus relies on them both, so can we.
Listen each weekday from 5 to 6 p.m. Central for the Hamilton Corner with Abraham Hamilton III, Public Policy Analyst for the American Family Association.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher on American Family Radio.
Glad to have you back on the ship today on the USS Focal Point. And I'm trying to think of some kind of analogy or some kind of cool thing like Brian always does and tie in the USS Focal Point ship. But Jeff, I'm having trouble. So welcome aboard.
Just say you're amiable, convivial, and effervescent.
Yeah.
How about that?
Brian, all those long words.
Yeah, Brian has all those long words, but I guess when you go to an Ivy League, or he went to
Stanford.
Yeah. When you go to Stanford, you can use those kind of words. But hey, I'm from Mississippi. Went to a Mississippi university. We like to keep it simple around here. Yeah. But before we went on the break, I teased how we're going to talk about all of the holes in Dr. Ford's argument, the accuser of Brett Kavanaugh. And I want to go through this letter that she sent to Dianne Feinstein back in July. I know Brian's probably already been over with this, but I want to point out a couple things. Reading directly from the letter here. Here's what Dr. Ford says in her letter to Dianne Feinstein in July. Dr. Ford says, Brett Kavanaugh, I'm halfway through here. Brett Kavanaugh physically and sexually assaulted me during high school in the early 1980s. He conducted these acts with the assistance of redacted. Imagine that. They love redacting things. Both were 1 to 2 years older than me and students at a local private school. Both the assault occurred in a suburban Maryland area home at a gathering that included me and 4 others. All right, so here's what I want to break down here. First off, the accuser says that it happened sometime in the early 1980s. All right, so that's anywhere from 1980 to 1985. In the early 1980s, do you not remember what year it was? That's not the only detail she does not remember, or either leaves out intentionally, one of the two. Both were 1 to 2 years older, talking about both of the alleged, attackers or whatever. She says both were 1 to 2 years older. All right, so you don't even know how old they were? You went to school with these folks and you have no idea what age they were? Last thing, she says, the assault occurred in a suburban Maryland area home. Do you know how big the suburbs are in Maryland? You're talking about thousands and thousands of homes. A suburban Maryland area home at a gathering that included me and 4 others. So she either knows these details and left them out for whatever reason, or she doesn't know the details, maybe because the event never occurred. And if she starts laying out specific years, specific dates, specific ages, and specific addresses, then her whole theory might be debunked, because who knows? Brett Kavanaugh could have been in New York when this alleged event occurred. And so there's a reason, I believe, that Dr. Ford is leaving out very key details. And here's the thing. Some might say, well, you know, when you're a victim to events like this, it's very traumatic. It's kind of a blur. You don't remember a lot of details. You know, I can understand that. Maybe you don't remember what color shirt someone was wearing. You know, maybe you don't remember, you know, a few other details or exactly what occurred. But you can't tell me you don't know what house you were at and what year it was in. I mean, those are the 2 most simple details that would help the media get to the bottom of all this. But Dr. Ford conveniently leaves out key details. Well, the Senate, as you know, the Senate delayed the confirmation vote. The confirmation vote for Brett Kavanaugh was supposed to happen today in 30 minutes ago. 1:45 East Coast time was when the confirmation vote was supposed to happen. But the Republicans tried to play nice with Dr. Ford, the accuser. The Republicans tried to play nice. You know, we're going to delay this. We're going to let all sides speak. We're going to have, you know, we're going to have Dr. Ford to Washington. We're going to bring her before the committee. Let her tell her story. Well, guess what Dr. Ford said? No thanks. She said, I don't want to come to Washington. You know why I think she might not want to come to Washington? And I'm making a lot of assumptions here, but that's what the media does, so who cares? I think Dr. Ford doesn't want to come to Washington because she'll be put under oath before the U.S. Senate, and if she lies about her story under oath to the U.S. Senate, then she's perjured herself and she could go to jail. I think that's why Dr. Ford, to her credit, doesn't want to come to Washington and be under oath before the U.S. Senate, because who knows? She might be lying. Another angle to this, as I mentioned, is the Republicans are trying to play nice. And one report I'm about to play here, this is clip 2. Republicans are bending over backwards to meet the demands of the Democrats, and I think the American people are absolutely fed up with this kowtowing. Let's listen to a Fox report. This is clip 2.
Judiciary Chairman Republican Chuck Grassley is still holding out hope Professor Christine Blasey Ford will speak to his committee on Monday, but he's not willing to draw this out much longer, advising her attorneys they're on the clock, writing, prepared testimony and biography are due to the committee by 10 a.m. on Friday, September 21, if she intends to testify on Monday. Grassley's even willing to send committee staff to California if she wants to avoid the bright lights of a congressional hearing.
Where I'm focused right now is doing everything that we can to make Dr. Ford comfortable with coming before our committee, either in an open session or a closed session or a public or a private interviews.
2 critical GOP votes on the Kavanaugh nomination, Jeff Flake of Arizona and Susan Collins of Maine, sent tweets strongly encouraging her to reconsider.
All right, well, there you have it. That's a Fox News report about how the Republicans are kowtowing to the Democratic demands and the demands of Dr. Ford, who I believe is falsely accusing Brett Kavanaugh of sexual misconduct 36 years ago. But you notice there at the end of that clip, 2 Republican senators who are absolutely begging Dr. Ford to come forth and come to the Senate is Susan Collins of Maine and Jeff Flake of Arizona. They put out tweets this morning and yesterday saying, please, Dr. Ford, please come to Washington and testify. I don't understand why Republicans are so desperate to get Dr. Ford under oath, why they're so desperate to get her before the Senate. Either she wants to come and share her story, or she doesn't. They don't beg. I wish they would beg this hard to get some of the cronies under the Obama administration to come testify under oath about the misdeeds they did. The Republicans, when Obama officials like the IRS, Lois Lerner says, well, I'm pleading the fifth, and then other Obama officials says, well, I'm just not coming to talk under oath about issues, the Republicans say, okay, that's fine. But then Dr. Ford says, I'm not coming, and they say, please, Dr. Ford, please come to Washington. Why don't they do the same thing with the cronies who actually need to answer things? That's because they have no backbone. Republicans have no backbone. And here's what I think Chairman Chuck Grassley should have said when this all came out last week, here's what he should have said to Dr. Ford and the Democrats. Democrats, Dr. Ford, and all involved in this, we held 30-plus hours of hearings last week where witnesses for and against Kavanaugh had the opportunity to come forth and testify under oath on national television. Dr. Ford, her attorney, or one of the Democratic senators could have appeared and read the letter aloud when they didn't. But they didn't. And for this reason, this is what Chuck Grassley should say, and for this reason it is too late to bring forth baseless allegations, and the committee will move on with the process of sending Kavanaugh to the full Senate floor for a vote. That is what Chuck Grassley should have done. But instead, they're piddling around, doing nothing, delaying the hearings for a week, and we may get Brett Kavanaugh on the Supreme Court before October 1, but that's not guaranteed. And so the Democrats, I think the Democrats have won this thing. Even if it comes out that Dr. Ford is completely lying, which I think it will, the Democrats have totally won this thing. They pushed these hearings back weeks, and on Monday, I can guarantee you, mark my word on this, on Monday, when the Republicans and Democrats on the Judiciary Committee have a hearing to vote on Kavanaugh, it will be another circus. It will be worse than last week. The Democrats are going to do a walkout, they're going to yell, they're going to scream, and they're going to block, and they're going to obstruct. I can almost guarantee it, because they can and they will. Democrats are the party of Antifa. They are Antifa now. Moving on, clip 3 here. This is Ann Coulter on Tucker Carlson's show. She had a very interesting point about the Republicans having no backbone. This is clip 3. Let's listen.
This is a political tactic designed to prevent the president from putting his nominee on the court. Why are Republicans in the Congress playing along with this?
I think some of them, and this is the only thing that I think makes it dangerous for Republicans, for Kavanaugh, and for the Republic, because there are certain Republicans in the Senate who so hate Trump. Right. They would put their egos above the good of the country. And what so many Republicans said about voting, and every 4 years say about voting for any Republican, we have to do it for the Supreme Court nominees. No, maybe not for Ben Sasse. Maybe not for Senator Bob Corker. They just so hate Trump. That could end up hurting Kavanaugh. But I think your point that if they get away with this, then you have CNN running the country. It's not even just the Democrats running the country. It's the media running the country, because this allegation could be made against anyone at any time, absolutely non-disprovable.
That's exactly right, Ann Coulter. Thank you for speaking some sanity into the cable news lines at Fox News. And another point to this story is Senator Feinstein came out, I think yesterday or the day before that. I get all my days mixed up with these fast news cycles. But Senator Feinstein came out this week, and she said, well, you know what? I'm not really sure if Dr. Ford's telling the truth or not. I'm not really sure if Dr. Ford's telling the truth or not. So you have Feinstein leaks this letter to the media, and then she goes, well, I don't really know if it's true or not. Feinstein could have at least lied and said, I think she's credible. I think she's telling the truth, but she says, I don't really know. And so I would urge these senators, if you're going to leak these slanderous claims, then you need to at least believe the claim that you're leaking. You need to at least believe the claim that you're leaking. And I honestly think that Republicans like the circus. They like the delay. I know Rob, our producer, brought this up this morning. Maybe they like it because there's probably some other things going on in Washington that they really don't want us to read. They really don't want us to know about, and we'll talk about that after the break. This $850 billion plus budget that the Republicans just passed in the Senate 2 days ago, and guess what? It does not fund President Trump's promised border wall. It does not fund President Trump's border wall. Guess how many departments $850 billion funds? 3 of 12 federal departments. We'll talk about the out-of-control spending, what President Trump should do about it, and how actually the Democrats are likely the party of sexual misdeeds.
This is Dr. Richard Land, president of Southern Evangelical Seminary. Welcome to Bringing Every Thought Captive. A few days ago, I shared with you that I had the opportunity to preview the movie Unbroken, Path to Redemption, the moving story of how Olympic runner Louis Zapparini was able to overcome post-traumatic stress disorder and alcoholism brought on by his horrible treatment as a POW in Japan during World War II. He was delivered from these afflictions by coming to know Jesus Christ as his personal Savior at the famous Billy Graham Los Angeles Crusade in 1949. Will Graham, Billy Graham's grandson, plays his grandfather in the movie. It is a powerful story, well told in the film. The film got rave reviews from audiences who saw it opening weekend. Filmgoers gave Unbroken, Path to Redemption an A on the CinemaScore rating system. Kathy Lee Gifford said, "It was a beautiful, beautiful film." Greg Laurie said, "Go see it." Glenn Beck said, "The movie whose hope will stay with you for days." Other comments were, "Amazing, fabulous movie, a winner all the way, an awesome film that will impact many." And the movie was the 10th highest grossing movie of the past weekend, while showing on only 1,620 theaters, far below the national average. As I explained to you before, the more people who go see Unbroken, the Path to Redemption, the more theaters it will run in and the longer it will stay there. And so you have an opportunity to see a great film, take your friends to see it, and make an impact by making certain through buying tickets that it'll show in more theaters for a longer period of time, and more movies like this are likely to be made. This is a chance to fire a shot in the cultural war for good movies, good entertainment, inspiring stories. This is Richard Land.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher
on American Family Radio.
Listen to the audio podcast or download today's program at afr.net. You can also read Brian Fisher's columns at afa.net.
afa.net.
All right, welcome aboard. Welcome back aboard USS Focal Point on the American Family Radio Network. I am co-hosting. Well, I'm not co-hosting. I'm co-hosting with Jeff Reed and Rob Gardner over here. But, Rob, you told me before the break that you had a clip that might tie right into what I'm talking about. Am I right on that?
Yeah, we got Dianne Feinstein saying what you just talked about.
Great. Well, let's jump right into that clip.
It's really too bad that no one called her or called her lawyer. My understanding is she got emails. And this is a woman, and I really believe, who's been profoundly impacted by this. Now, I can't say everything's truthful. I don't know.
Oh, just stop talking, Senator Feinstein. Just stop talking after you talk about how, this is a woman who's been through a lot. Then just end the sentence right there. But instead, she has to tell the truth. And the truth is, nobody knows if Dr. Ford's telling the truth. Actually, all the facts are leaning towards she's telling a fib. But nonetheless, Senator Feinstein, the author of this circus, even says there, boy, these politicians who are getting older in age in Washington, they when they get before these cameras, you just never know what they're going to say. You just never know what they're going to say. Senator Feinstein there says, well, I don't really know if she's telling the truth. But hey, it's worth talking about. The FBI should look into it. Look into the thing that we don't even know if it happened or not. Moving on, glad we had that clip there. Appreciate that, Rob. Moving on here, President Trump put out a statement or a tweet this morning, and here's what he said. I want to know, where is the money for the border security? And where is the money for the wall in this ridiculous spending bill? And where will it come from after the midterms? Dems are obstructing law enforcement and border security. Republicans must finally get tough. And I couldn't agree more with President Trump. And here's what I talked about before the break. I kind of teased. Republicans passed this $850+ billion spending bill 2 days ago. And here are the 3 departments that it covers. Yes, you heard that right. 3 departments over $850 billion. Department of Defense, Health and Human Services, and Labor and Education. All right, that's 4 departments. But nonetheless, Department of Defense, Health and Human Services, Labor and Education. Labor and Education actually might be one combined department. I'll have to check on that. But nonetheless, the Senate passed this bill with 93 to 7 votes, 93 in favor, 7 against. And the important thing is this bill funds Planned Parenthood. It funds all of the pet projects of the Democrats, all of their crony, wasteful projects to all their special interest groups. And it does not fund President Trump's wall, not even one single mile of the wall. And as a matter of fact, it specifically excludes any Army Corps of Engineer or military funding to be used for the wall. They specifically excluded it so President Trump couldn't use that money for the wall. And, you know, here's what the Republicans, here's what they do. They go on TV and tell us, even President Trump's guilty of this too, and I know many of us don't like to criticize President Trump because he's actually one of the only ones up there fighting for us. But here's one area where President Trump's wrong, amongst other Republicans in Washington, is the fact that he's been back and forth on whether he's going to fight and veto this bill over the wall or not. We keep getting these mixed signals. He either needs to stick to the fact that he's willing to veto the bill over no wall funding, or just say, I'm not willing to fight. I'm not willing to fight on this issue, but he needs to stick to one of the talking points. He's been back and forth. But here's the talking point they say. They say, well, you know, it's election season, it's the midterms, it's not a very popular view to shut down the government, on and on and on. But we keep hearing these same excuses year after year. Matter of fact, month after month. Here's the 3 excuses they use. Mark my word on this. Military funding, election season, and we're out of time. That's the 3 excuses they use. And they rotate the 3 so we get confused and forget that they've already used the first 2 excuses. They say, it's election season, this is not a popular view, so we just need to get this budget passed. Let's get past the midterms, and then we'll cross this bridge then. All right, so here's what they're going to do. After the midterms, mark my word, they're going to say either this. They're either going to say, well, we're out of time. Well, first off, they may lose the House and the Senate, so who knows what they're going to say then. But they may say, you know, we're running on a tight deadline. We only have a couple days left. We don't need to shut down the government. Military funding is involved. So let's just pass this bill, and then we'll cross this bridge next time. That's what they say. And then, or they'll say this. They'll say, you know, we've got to fund our military. We absolutely have to fund our military. So let's fund Planned Parenthood. Let's keep killing babies, and let's not fund the border wall, but we got to fund our military. We've got to fund our military. Those are the top excuses that they use over and over again, and I think all of us, the American people, we've seen this rodeo before. We've seen how this game's played, and I'm just not falling for it. I'm calling their hand. I'm calling Trump's hand. I'm calling all the Republicans' hand. They're not going to fund this wall now, and they're not going to fund it after the midterms. The only way they're going to fund it is if we go march on Washington and just absolutely embarrass them, or if President Trump will veto the spending bill and send it back to Congress and say, look, I'm happy to fund all of your pet projects. I'm happy to fund all of your waste. Matter of fact, if President Trump could say, I'm happy to fund Planned Parenthood and keep killing babies, but fund my border wall. Fund my border wall. And so I think it would be better if President Trump told Congress, let's stop killing babies and let's start protecting American citizens by funding the border wall. The American people are fed up with this nonsense. And we've almost become cynical to the whole idea that we have elected officials in Washington who are supposed to be actually doing the people's business, because they're up there holding hearing after hearing, press conference after press conference, and nothing seems to ever get done. But some content that I promised I would bring you the whole show is the idea, and it's looking like some of the evidence stacking up against some of these Democrats, that they actually might be the party of sexual misdeeds. The first one I'll talk about is Cory Booker, Mr. Spartacus, on Capitol Hill in the U.S. Senate. Well, guess what Spartacus did? That's just what we're going to call him the rest of the show. Here's what Spartacus did. Back in college, I believe, in 1984, he wrote an article for his campus newspaper And here's what he admitted to. I'm just going to read directly from Spartacus' mouth himself. Here's what he said, quote, New Year's Eve, 1984, I will never forget. I was 15. All right, so he's writing an article in college, but he's writing about something that happened in high school. I was 15. As the ball dropped, I leaned over to hug a friend. This is New Year's Eve. The ball dropped. I leaned over to hug a friend, and she met me instead with an overwhelming kiss. As we fumbled upon the bed, all right, this is not inappropriate per se, but if you got small kids around, you may not want to have to explain this to them, but it's just talking about kissing. So I think that's PG-13. Senator Spartacus says, as we fumbled upon the bed, I remember debating my next move as if it were a chess game. That's what he wrote in the newspaper. With the Top Gun slogan ringing in my head, I slowly reached for her upper body. After having my hand pushed away, I reached my mark. I don't know what he's talking about there, and I don't even want to try to get down that rabbit trail because it's probably not good. But anyways, he goes on to say, and towards the end, he says, our groping ended soon, and while no relationship ensued, a friendship did. You see, the next week in school, she told me that she was drunk that night and didn't really know what she was doing. And so there you have it. The word groping, Spartacus used himself back in 1992 in this article he wrote for his local newspaper about an event that occurred in high school. So Senator Cory Booker admits, yeah, I've groped somebody before back in high school when I was 15 years old. And so I wonder if there'll be a Senate investigation into that. Better yet, we probably need the FBI to look into that. We probably need the FBI.
Especially since he just announced yesterday that he's running for president.
Well, see, that's an even more valid point. You know, if you're going to run for president, let's do an FBI background check, and let's look into these 30-plus-year-old allegations. Oh, wait, they're not allegations. They're your own words. You groped a 15-year-old in high school, and you wrote about it.
Yeah.
Laughing about it. Wow, Senator Cory Booker, shame on you. We'll see if there's any left-wing media outrage. I doubt, as Brian Fisher says, as Talking Snake Media will talk about that news story. But that's not the end. Moving on, another name within the Democratic Party, Keith Ellison, congressman out of Minnesota. Well, his ex-girlfriend came forth within the last few weeks, and she said, well, Mr. Keith Ellison was very abusive physically and emotionally towards me when we dated. And these reports do not date back to 1980s. They date back to 2017. Last year, Miss Monahan, let me just read the medical examination of Miss Monahan, reading directly from the medical report. All right, moving on. She says, Miss Monahan, Keith Ellison's alleged girlfriend, ex-girlfriend at the time, it says that she states, the victim here, the alleged victim, she states that she was in a very stressful environment for years, emotional and physical abuse by a partner with whom she is now separated. She did not have any physical injuries that require a physical examination in the past, and she identifies the individual she was involved with as Congressman Ellison. That's not the accuser writing that. That is the doctor writing that. That is the doctor at this medical clinic, Park Nicollet Medical Clinic, writing in November of 2017 that this lady was allegedly sexually assaulted or physically assaulted by Keith Ellison. That's not it on Keith Ellison. We'll talk more about this after the break, but we're going to take calls after I get done with this DNC scandal stuff with Keith Ellison and Cory Booker. We're going to take calls, 888-589-8840. You can call in. Let's keep it to the topics discussed on the show today. 888-589-8840. We have the Kavanaugh circus. We have the horrible budget, and we have these sexual misconduct reports out of the Democratic Party. Stay tuned to Focal Point on American Family Radio. We'll talk to you after the break.
Christian Care Ministries' first ever Day of Sharing is happening on Saturday, October 6th, and you don't want to miss it. Christians all over the country will be serving their local communities by sharing their lives, faith, talents, and resources. The idea is to find a need, meet the need, and impact the kingdom right where you are. To get more information or to sign up to join in, visit dayofsharing.com. That's dayofsharing.com.
Announcing the latest book from Dr. Robert Jeffress.
It's called Choosing the Extraordinary Life, God's 7 Secrets for Success and Significance. And it's a book about how to experience in the here and now what God has for you.
So your assignment today, people, is to go buy a copy of Robert's new book,
Choosing the Extraordinary Life by Dr. Robert Jeffress. Available now at afastore.net.
afastore.net, afastore.net. Yeah. I'll say it again, afastore.net.
Here's Dr. John Oswalt from the American Family Studios documentary, The God Who Speaks.
We are inveterate idolaters. We inveterately attempt to find means within the cosmos where we can achieve our goals, where we can control God for our purposes. And it's astonishing the ways in which we do it. When the Old Testament spends so much time attacking idols, we often think, well, I don't have any idols. I don't have any little statues in my closet. I don't pray to some god or something. But idolatry is really the attempt to manipulate the divine through my own efforts. That's what idolatry is.
Visit thegodwhospeaks.org.
American Family Radio.
You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Brian Fisher.
All right, last segment of Focal Point. I am your guest host, Walker Wildman. Brian is out traveling today on AFA business, and he'll be back probably next week. He'll be back Monday here on Focal Point, and I'm glad I had Robin here to give me the head nod that Brian will be back Monday. That didn't sound very positive there.
I don't think you could keep him away any longer than that.
No, he's got to be steering the ship.
He's
got to be steering the ship. Right. But that's good. Brian loves his audience, loves American Family Radio, and loves to be back in the saddle when he can. So Brian will be back Monday, but in the meantime, we're going to keep talking about these topics, and we're going to take your calls here in a few minutes. 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. But this news story I was talking about regarding Congressman Keith Ellison, there's another aspect to it, and this is a totally different report. So we have the report from Congressman Ellison, his ex-girlfriend. The report was from a doctor's office that basically said that Keith Ellison's ex-girlfriend was drugged out of his apartment by Congressman Ellison. That's the accusation. But here's a separate accusation. This is a 911 record. It's not the audio, but it's basically a transcript of the 911 call that a lady by the name of Amy Alexander allegedly made back in 2005. Here's what the police report, or the 911 call report, says. The caller's name is redacted, the address is redacted, and the phone number, so that's for privacy purposes. But here's what this report, this 911 report says. The date is May 16th of 2005. Here's what the 911 operator typed into her computer. Caller reporting she was assaulted. I'm reading this slowly and like I don't know how to read because a lot of it's in code speak that law enforcement use. Caller reporting she was assaulted by Ellison/Keith/BM, which means black male, /41, which means his age was 41, /wearing, WRG, wearing suit, leaving apartment, and then it says no EMS needed. Caller wants to see squad, which means a police car. Caller wants to see an officer. That's the 911 report. I'm going to read that one more time. This is allegedly from one of Keith Ellison's partners or girlfriends back in 2005. They allegedly had a dispute, and then she called 911, and here's what she told the operator. Caller reporting she was assaulted by Ellison/Keith/black male, age 41, wearing a suit, leaving apartment. And then she goes on to say, I don't need an ambulance, but I do need an officer to come so I can report this. So I wonder if there's going to be a DNC investigation into that. Likely not, because this is a one-way street, folks. The left wants to use these phony sexual assault allegations, many of them, to smear conservatives, to smear constitutionalists, but when it comes to very credible accusations against their own party, they completely ignore it. They completely ignore it. We're going to hit the phone lines here. If you want to call in, 888-589-8840, call in to the show today. We're going to go to Ricky in my home state of Mississippi. Ricky, welcome to Focal Point.
Thank you, Walker. To begin with, I would like to say that except for the House Freedom Caucus, we need to vote every other Republican and Democrat out of office and start from scratch. These guys the Republicans are so wimpy, and to use a phrase that Schwarzenegger would say, that they're girly men. They're afraid to stand up for what's right and what's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And also with the proposed budget, Trump needs to get the biggest Sharpie he can find and write veto across it until they start putting some things on there that he wants.
Yeah, that's a very good points there, Ricky, and I'll let you go and I'll respond to your statements over the air. But you know, here's what's funny. Here's what's serious. I know many women that have more backbone than the men politicians in Washington. I know many women who have way more backbone, way more courage, way more boldness that would do a much better job in Washington, D.C. than some of these politicians. I know Haley, what's her last name? The UN ambassador, Nikki Haley. Thank you, Jeff. I just had a brain lapse there. Nikki Haley, the UN ambassador, can you imagine her as a senator? She might have a little backbone. So, anyways, good comments there, Ricky. We're going to go to Monty in Culpeper, Virginia. Monty, welcome to Focal Point.
I'm going to make it very short, Walker. You may keep the admiralship of Brian Fisher, and he better be careful to get back on that ship. I absolutely want to come to Tupelo, Mississippi, and do that telethon, because our talking gets Jesus Christ at the top, Donald Trump seeking Jesus, and all those senators and all those House of Representatives trying to figure out what in the world is truth when you listen to AFR radio. Thank you, brother.
All right, Monty, appreciate that call. I'll take that as an absolute compliment that I could take Brian Fisher's position, but I'm not going to, because Brian does an excellent job, has a faithful following, and I have my own show. I've got my own show, so no need to intrude on Brian's show. Exposing Washington each Saturday at 2:30 p.m. Central. You can tune in, listen to my show. I also sit in on Today's Issues each weekday, 10 to 11:30 Central. But we'll be looking forward to having Brian back. No one can replace Brian Fisher. We'll go to Ruth in Texas. Ruth, welcome to Focal Point.
Yes, first of all, I would miss Brian terribly.
Me too.
Second, I have been assaulted several times, seriously, a couple times through my life. And I'm 69 now. I cannot forget any of it. Any details, any times, any places, I cannot forget. How this woman thinks that we could believe her when she doesn't even remember where or when it happened. I'm sorry, I don't believe her.
Thank you, Ruth, for calling in. And that's Ruth from Texas. Ruth just said, if you didn't hear her, Ruth just said, I've been assaulted multiple times. And she said, I could never forget it. I could never forget those details. And I believe Ruth's testimony there should show us that if something like this happens to you, you don't forget it. You remember it vividly, and at a minimum, you can remember the location that you were and the year that it occurred. Thank you, Ruth, for calling in. Very, very wise words there. Mike in Trinity, Texas. Mike, welcome to Focal Point.
Hey, listen, Walker, I think all of this needs to get cleared up with this Republican Senate that we have. We've got 7 ball players that want to take care of President Trump. Those are the 7 that didn't vote for that budget. What Mitch McConnell and all of the rest of his girly boys are doing is becoming globalists. They're going to fight Donald Trump, even if it means losing the Senate. They're going to give it up just to stop him because he is ruining the globalist idea of what this world should be about. Thank you.
All right, Mike. Very good points there. And as I mentioned, I know some women that got way more backbone than the politicians in Washington, D.C., so I think we're doing our women a disservice by talking about how the politicians in Washington are girly and they're girly men. You know, I think they're men, but I think they're just wimps. There's such thing as men, as boys who are just wimps. And I think some of these politicians in Washington, many of them actually, they're just wimps and they have no backbone. They're scared of the mainstream media more than they're scared of the American voter. And I think they prove that because they come home, they kowtow to the voters, and they try to act like they care about what we care about, and then they go to Washington and vote exactly how we want them not to. Larry in Indiana, last call today. Larry, welcome to Focal Point.
Hi, Walker. It's good to talk to you.
Thanks, Larry.
Hey,
glad to have you on.
Yeah, thank you. My heart goes out to any woman who's been assaulted. It doesn't make any difference how long ago. The problem is I believe that this is a hit on him twofold. She wants to keep him out of the Supreme Court, and also with her mother and father, which Kavanaugh's mother was the judge who sat on one of her mother and father's cases, and it didn't go her way. So I think it's payback. But we're dealing with a bunch of children, really. These people are so, they want to be victims so bad, they're looking for anything, and they will do whatever they have to do to maintain the power they have, because that's all they have. They don't have anything to do with Jesus Christ. They don't have anything to do with knowing who God is.
Yeah.
So they think the only power they have is the power they can obtain by lying, cheating, stealing.
All right, Larry. Larry from Indiana, thank you for the call. Larry's exactly right, and so is Mike. Politicians in Washington, D.C. will do anything and everything to maintain power, even if that means slandering a good man like Brett Kavanaugh. Thanks for tuning in to Focal Point on American Family Radio. Stay tuned to AFR. Visit our website, afr.net. Brian will be back in the saddle on Monday.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.